Okay, so I wanted to go through a really quick tutorial video just to walk you through the flatting process that I talked about in our previous lecture. Make sure that it's really clear for you and that you know exactly how that process works. Let me share my screen here and walk you through how it all goes. All right, so here I am in Photoshop, and you should see there's two circles in front of you. And depending on the resolution of the video, these two might look very similar to each other, but they're actually quite different in an important way. And knowing the terminology and what it means will be valuable to you as you go through and work away on uh, creating these selection areas that we call flats. So there's two different terms here. This is an anti-aliased circle, and this is an aliased circle. What does that mean? Becomes a lot more clear when we zoom in. So what you'll probably be able to see here is this circle on your left has that fuzzing, has that blending of the black into the background. So we have all these different areas of gray on the fringe of the brush, which is why it looks smooth because it has that blended line. On the right-hand side, you have these absolute pixels stair stepping their way down the edge of the circle. And this is called aliasing. So when we get rid of aliasing, these absolute perfect pixel edges, we call it anti-aliasing on the side, okay? Knowing what these two things are is going to change the way you think about these selection areas and how you work. Because when we use something like the magic wand tool in Photoshop, I'm selecting here, I have two different qualities turned on right now. I have anti-aliasing, which is pretty important, and I have contiguous. And contiguous allows you to select everything that is connected in one single area. So if I click here on the left hand or on the right hand circle, what you'll see is it grabs every single one of those black pixels. Because they are absolute, it's easy for the magic wand to be able to pick them and separate them from others. Watch what happens when I select the left hand circle. Do you see how it does not select right to the edge? Do you see how it selects a fringe? I could adjust the settings to select more or select less, but what you'll eventually happen is you'll get the reverse kind of effect. If I select here and I increase the threshold on this, it'll select different aspects of it, but there's always going to be some sort of a fringe. It's not quite grabbing all the pixels. So the selection area can be adjustable, and that is not what we want. If we create a series of selections, we want them to be consistent. So if we select a particular piece of furniture in our scene, or any kind of element, that we know we're going to get the same thing every time, and we're going to be able to work on those areas consistently as we go. So let me take this to the actual room line art that I showed you previously for the tutorial. So we have this room that's been put together. There's a bunch of different furniture and elements in the scene. And we want to, before we start doing any kind of rendering, we want to be able to choose these elements purely. We want to be able to just select the sofa chair here, or the rolling chair, or the desk, or the lamp, or any of those different elements, and know that we're only rendering on those particular spots. How do we do that? By setting up these flats, these selection areas, and by doing that with aliased lines, or sorry, colors as selection areas. So I have a new layer here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move through this sofa chair and select all of it. There's a few different ways you can do this. Probably the easiest one I've found, if you have a tablet, is to grab the lasso tool. Again, make sure you turn off anti-aliasing, this check mark here, that setting, turn it off. We do not want any fuzziness of the selection area. We want it to be absolute pixels. The same thing would hold true if I grab the polygonal lasso, which is another really useful one for doing this. Turn off anti-aliasing. The other tool I'm going to use is a brush, but instead of using a brush, which can again have a fuzzy edge and whatnot, I'm going to click, hold on that, and go to the pencil tool. The pencil tool is an aliased line. So what you'll see here when I click on it, again, same kind of thing we talked about before. Those are absolute pixels. There's no fuzziness. There's no blended edge. And that means our selection areas are going to be absolute as we're working away. So I'm going to go through here. I can grab the lasso tool, and I can just start selecting up on the edge. Make sure I've got overlap. I can do this in small sections just like this. Then I'll hold the space bar in order to scroll around the scene, and I can hold shift. You'll see that little plus mark goes onto my selection. And now I can add to my selection just like that. Now I have both of them involved. So I can slowly but surely go around the edge of this particular object, select all these different parts. For straighter edged objects and furniture, the polygonal lasso can be really, really useful. Some people will just go in straight with the pencil brush and they'll just color it all in. And that also works. I kind of like doing the selection areas with the lasso tool. As long as you end up with those clean selections, there's no wrong way of doing it. They're all just methodologies. The first sort of element that you choose in any particular scene is always going to take you kind of the longest. And then once you have overlap, what you're going to see is it gets easier as we go. And don't worry, I'm not going to flat the entire file here for you on the tutorial. I'm just going to go through this one piece, and then I'll show you what a finished flat file looks like, the particular qualities you want to look for in it, and show you how it works. Just selecting all these things. Make sure, again, that you're zoomed in close enough that you're able to very clearly get that overlap on the line art. The more careful you are with your selection areas and the more accurate you are at the start, it's just going to save you a lot of time. That's what this really is. It's an amount of time that you're going to spend setting up your file and prepping it for the rendering that you're going to be doing that will save you just ridiculous amounts of hassle as you work away on this stuff during the rendering process. And not just the initial rendering, but also your ability to edit, as I talked about during the lecture. And I'll show that to you all here again, just to make sure you've got that theory in place. All right. Selecting all this stuff, we've almost got it back to the beginning. Going a little bit slower than I would normally, just to really show you how it all works. Almost done here. Here's the hookup spot. Link those together, and now you see I've got this kind of hole in the middle of it with the marching ants, as we call them. Select all those. Bingo. And now I can use either the fill tool or a brush, make sure it's not a gradient. Going to select the bucket, make sure anti-aliasing is turned off again, and that contiguous is turned on. I want to pick, this isn't about local color. I don't care what the color of these objects are, just that they're very different from each other in terms of their colors. So I've got these pure tones here. Oh, you can see there's a spot I missed there in my selection area. Well, that's sort of a good thing for me to be able to fix now. So what I'll do is I will grab my pencil tool and just touch that up. There we go. So now I have the entire chair all in green. And whatever objects I do next, again, same kind of thing. So here, let me use the polygonal lasso, and I'll show you how quick it can be to go through this. So because the polygonal lasso, you create a series of anchor points. It's perfect for straight lines and angles, just like this. So I can do this whole section in just one pass. Here. Make sure, again, I've got overlap. And you can always touch up these with the pencil tool or with, other selection areas if you need to. You can always go back. All right, so that's all selected. Grab another pure color. And I could use the brush just with a big honking brush like this, or I could use the bucket fill, as long as anti-aliasing is turned off as I'm using it. Okay, so there's two items that are selected. Oh, because I use the brush, this is where using the bucket fills better, because then it won't fill that in and it'll buttress right up against the edge of it. There we go. Okay, so I've got the lamp and I've got the chair all ready to go. Let me show you though what a finished flat file would look like. So here's an example of a finished series of flats, and it is all the different objects separated. You could get more granular if you wanted. You could separate the wheels and all kinds of different stuff, or these books and boxes into their own flats. But for our purposes, this will work quite well. Once you have that flat layer done, notice here that I've labeled that layer as flats and I've locked that layer. And that layer is active and usable even if I turn off the visibility. So this little eyeball here to the left of it, I turn it off. It's still an existing layer. So I can create new layers here. And let's say I want to work on this chair and I want to just render, this particular spot. I can grab my brush. And this is where having all those settings, I've got pen pressure on my brush. I'm going to grab grayscale, grab a tone that I want to work on, and I can go back to my flats layer, grab the magic wand, just select the chair all by itself, because again, I'm selecting it based on those flats. And then I can start to render and work away on it. I've got all my pen pressure, all my, different settings and stuff that I want on this brush. And I don't have to worry about making adjustments. I don't have to worry about making mistakes or going outside the lines. I can get darker, I can get brighter as I need to in whatever spot I want. And I'm doing really, really simple flat, kind of brush work here. But point is I can go right outside the object because the object is selected by itself really cleanly. I can erase back the exact same way. And I'm not worried about, I can get a big honking brush here and I can get a nice clean erase. I'm not getting rid of anything that is not the chair because that selection area is all on its own. Okay. And then if later on I go work on a dozen different things in the scene, I could, make, let's say I want to grab the wall. So I can go to my flats layer, select the wall, select the blinds. I could create a new layer, or I could even work on the same layer as before. Grab a different gray. Grab a big, brush, whether it's pen pressure or not. And again, I'm only affecting those areas. All that annoying selection outside of the, around the cup and around the table and around the chair, it's done for me. I only had to do it once and now it's fixed and ready to go. Whatever I want to experiment with, or I want to try different tones, or I want to try different elements, I can go in, I can add shadows. I could get, really, really dark in a particular area, and I'm never going to go outside those selection areas. I can do all kinds of different things. I could experiment with texture. I could experiment with light, all kinds of different stuff. And I would have that clean selection area. Let's say that I do a bunch of stuff here and I realize, oh, I didn't want the blinds to be that particular color, or that particular tone. It should be, those should be brighter or whatever. And again, I'm just sort of theorizing here and just quickly working away. So let's say I want to change just the blinds. I can go do a bunch of other things on this drawing, go back to my flats, just select the blinds, go to that same layer. I could do whatever I want. I could do brightness adjustments. It'll only affect the blinds, just like that, more or less. Whatever kind of effects, whatever kind of tones, whatever kinds of things I want to do, I have that flexibility. Same thing if I need to go back to the chair. If I decide, oh man, I got to do something different on the chair here, go to that flats layer. It's locked, but it's still active. I can still use it. And then I could do the exact same thing. I can make it brighter. I can make it darker. I could do all kinds of different stuff as needed in order to get that consistency. So what does that look like? Well, let's turn back on the flats layer. If I turn off the line art, what you see here is those absolute pixels. That's why those selection areas are so clean and so consistent. The box is just absolute pink pixels. The chair is purple. The colors don't matter. What matters is that each of them is different from each other and you don't repeat any of those colors in the scene. And as long as those are absolute values, then you can take that magic wand on the flats layer, select it, you'll get that clean absolute selection every single time. Super, super helpful, super useful. It will revolutionize the way that you work on complex scenes. It will improve your consistency. It will allow you to make edits. So if I ask you to change a particular thing or brighten or darken or adjust the shadows, you're no longer having to worry about making messy erase marks or mucking up different elements of it. If you have not worked with flats before, it is a real game changer. It's super, super important to the process. I hope you found this useful. I hope you understand how it all works. That most important thing to think about is remembering the difference between aliasing and anti-aliasing, and turning off for this process anti-aliasing for your selection tools, for your brushes, for your fill, as much as possible, so that you're not creating any fuzziness, that you're just able to build in these absolute selected zones.